Welcome back, guys, to Modded Minecraft 1.19, where last time we built the largest size industrial turbine that you can make in Mekanism. It is a 17 by 17 by 18, literally the biggest that you can make. And today we're going to make a fission reactor that is sized perfectly with this industrial turbine. I'll explain that more in detail in just a moment, but check this out, guys. If you haven't seen the video where we did this, I will share a link in the description, but it literally was the video that went live a couple of days ago. This one is 17 by 17 by 18, the maximum size, and I did put the induction matrix together to receive the power that this thing makes, because this is really what this is all about, making insane amounts of power and also getting ourselves on some radioactive byproduct, which we'll talk about later on at a different date. So I mentioned that we're going to make the perfect size reaction or a fission reactor, and you do that with a little bit of math. So it's a good idea to understand what you're looking at. So in the industrial turbine, you have four numbers that you can see here. Production is how much power it's making right now. Clearly none, right? Because it's not running. The flow rate is how much water or steam, probably steam in this case, that it's handling. And then capacity is how much steam it can hold just in sheer volume. And then max flow is how much steam this thing can bring in all at the exact same time. This max flow number is your limiting factor on how large of a fission reactor that you can make, along with another number that's in the turbine statistics section. The turbine statistics section shows you tank volume, the number of dispersers and vents, the number of blades and coils. The number that we really are looking for, actually this one's really interesting, max production tells you how much power you're going to be able to make at like if this turbine is running at 100%, then that's how much power you can make, 110 megajoules. That's pretty good. And then the second number that may or may not determine your limiting factor is in fact your max water output, which is in this case 13.9 million megabucket or millibuckets per tick. So this number is actually larger than the max flow. Max flow again is how much steam you can handle all per tick. The max water output is how much water it can send out per tick. So clearly the limiting factor will be the smaller number, and in this case it's the max flow. So the way you determine how to size your fission reactor is based on the smaller number, in this case this one. My max flow is 11,040,000 millibuckets per tick. The magic is to take this number and divide it by 20,000. And that's because the item here called the fission fuel assembly, each one of these can theoretically burn up to 1 millibucket per tick of fuel. And each of these will send 20,000 millibuckets of steam at this industrial turbine at a time, or per tick. So the math is simple. Divide this number by 20,000, and that'll tell you how many fission fuel assemblies you need. And in this case, my number is 552. Industrial turbine, 11,040,000 divided by 20,000 is 552. That means in a theoretical perfect world, my fission reactor would have 552 fission fuel assemblies. More than that, and it will overwhelm the industrial turbine. Less than that, and I'm not utilizing my industrial turbine completely. So let's talk now about the fission reactor. The fission reactor that I'm going to be making is going to be a 12 by 12 by 14. It's not exactly 552. The number is actually 550, which is pretty dang close. And that's because you got to build these things in a cube, either a rectangular or a perfect cube. You can't make them with an uneven number. So the math works out perfectly, and the math is actually quite simple to figure out. And I'll explain here in just a moment, okay? So after I build it, it'll make a lot more sense than before. So just trust me on this to size a perfect fission reactor to the largest industrial turbine you can make. This is the perfect size, 12 by 12 by 14. And so to make this, I need 248 casings, 4 ports, 4 adapters, logic adapters, 4 industrial alarms, 572 reactor glass, 50 control assemblies, and 550 fuel assemblies. Now, 550 is 2 less than 552, which means I'll be able to run, theoretically, this fission reactor at its maximum capacity, and this industrial turbine will be able to handle it. And even better, it'll be running at just under maximum capacity itself. So there's even if I accidentally max this thing out and tell it, hey, burn at full rate, because you can't tell it to burn at less than full rate, the turbine won't be the limiting factor. So that's perfect. I think the math works out perfectly there. And again, I'll explain how the math works out probably after the build, because it'll just be easier to understand. So now we need to go in and do our crafting. And I've already set up the crafting room up here. This is where we did some automation for building or crafting the industrial turbine. I have here some of the materials needed to craft the fission reactor. I'm going to end up needing 4,320 lead ingots, 2,262 osmium ingots, 2,216 redstone dust, 572 enriched iron, 1,548 steel ingots, and 391 glass blocks. I'm also going to need, and I've got them, I thought I had them here. Where'd they run off to now? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I never actually brought them out, but I need 52 of these elite control circuits as well. So the first stage of this whole thing is to make the fission reactor casings, because several of these items require these casings to craft themselves, which means we're going to need to make a whole bunch of steel casings, and the exact number of fission reactor casings is equivalent to the exact number of steel casings, because it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to need exactly 248 steel casings, and I do have quite a bit of material here. So you know what? I think I'll just get to doing that now. So ultimately, I'm going to need 3 stacks and 56 steel casings. So I think what I have here in my inventory is going to give me 3 full stacks. So I'll have to do something. Oh, I didn't grab my glass that time. Okay, well, let's do that one more time, and that will get me to I seem to have miscalculated how much steel I needed. Already starting off this video right. So I found the error in my notes, guys. Whenever I wrote it down, I wrote casings, and I had a certain number of those, 248, but then I also wrote 248 steel ingots and glass, as if it was a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's not. It's a 4-to-1, so you have to add 744 to that number. Yeah, so the total steel ingots is not 1,548. It's 1,548 plus 744, which is 2,292. And then for the glass, it's going to be 744 plus 391, which comes out to 1,135. So those are the total numbers. I was off. That's a great way to start, like I said just a second ago. 3 stacks plus 56 of steel casings. Now, the amount of steel and the amount of glass that you may have won't be reflective now of what you need, because I just made a bunch and stuffed it in there. I don't even know if I have enough of these. I'm pretty sure I've overmade now on steel and glass, but that's just better than not having enough. So kind of represents how complicated this stuff can be. So if I need to now make casings out of all of these steel Oh, I see what I did. Okay, so 1 steel casing makes 4 fission reactor casings. I didn't see that. I thought it was 1 steel to 1 casing. All right, error reversed. I actually made way too many steel casings. I'm sure it'll come in handy eventually, but no, my math was right to begin with. You know, I'm normally better off camera than I am on camera. So there you go. I made far too many steel casings. What I need actually is this many lead, and that's going to give me the right amount of casings. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then take away, you know, a few pieces to where I've got 56 left. I'll put these 8 back in there. Wow. Okay, so now I can shift click and I can make that many fission reactor casings. Okay, so now I have enough. Oh boy, I've got so many steel casings, it's ridiculous. Is this the right number? Yep, 248. That looks just about right. Okay, well, I've got some spare steel casings for the future, and that means I'm probably going to be low now on osmium, but I think I made up the difference with everything else. So, okay, so those are done. Now let's make 4 of these fission reactor ports, which just require the casings and elite control circuits. So we're going to make 2 of those just or two groups of those, which makes 4. And then I'm also going to grab some redstone and make 4 of these fission reactor logic adapters, which controlling and warn you when something is going wrong. So we're going to make 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There you go. Perfect. And now nothing else requires the casings for crafting. So I'm going to put the casings away temporarily. Now let's move on to the reactor glass. The reactor glass is going to be the other external part, and it is clear and pretty and nice and way better than a solid surface. And all I'm going to need is a whole lot of enriched iron, lead, and glass to make this happen. Remember, I need a fair amount of reactor glass, 572 to be exact, and that is going to be 8 stacks plus 60. So if I find 8 stacks plus 60 of enriched iron and the same amount of lead, and then 1/4 of that in glass, which is 143, then I should have the perfect amount. And I think I actually have the perfect amount of, I do. Okay, so if I just take out all of this enriched iron, then that's done. And that kind of did the math for me, didn't it? Stacks plus extra. So I need 8 stacks plus extra of the, it was lead, right? Yes, it is lead because you are dealing with radioactive materials. That's 4, that's 8, and then an extra. Put that 4 away. Oh, come on, man. Come on, work with me here. There you go. There you go. Put that back. And now I'll be able to just craft. Oh, I need to grab a couple stacks of glass. And now I can craft as much of this as I can make with the enriched iron. So that's going to be 4 stacks, 8. Okay, shift click is the way. 8, and then the remainder. There you go. So now I've got 8 stacks of reactor glass plus 60, and that is a major part done. Now I just realized I need to be checking this stuff off. So casings are done, ports are done, logic adapters done, industrial alarm will do in a little bit, and then the reactor glass is done. Now we have to move on to the control assemblies, and then the hardest part by far, the fuel assemblies. But let's do the control assemblies first. The control assemblies go on the top, and they control everything. So to make a control assembly, I'm going to need 200 lead, which is about 4 stacks or so. And then I'm going to need the same number of steel. So I'll take about 4 stacks. My limiting factor is actually going to be the elite control circuits that I've got here. So if I just shift click, I've got 50 elite control circuits and everything else, and I make exactly 50 control rod assemblies. There we go. All right. So that was the simple parts. Now for the not so simple part, the fuel assembly, the fission fuel assembly. I knew that name wasn't quite accurate. It's not hard to make. Lead ingots, steel ingots, and then a basic chemical tank, which you guys have seen many times, is just osmium and redstone. The problem, though, is that these tanks don't stack, and I'm about to make 550 of these fission fuel assemblies. And so anytime I'm doing crafting with something that doesn't stack, my favorite thing to do is use these formulaic assemblicators. I explained them in detail in the last episode when we did the turbine. So what I need is a little bit of osmium, which I've got, and a little bit of redstone. And I can start off this process by creating the crafting formula right in here. And I don't even know if this is correct. It looks like it is. Good. Okay, so I'm going to encode that. I'm going to turn on stock control, and I'm going to tell it to automatically craft. There you go. And it made 1 tank, and that tank went into here. So instead of having 550 individual slots in chests like this here, this is about 100 or so slots. I'd have to have 5 or 6 of these diamond chests to get this done. I can just use basic bins. So now I need to make exactly 550 to move on to the next stage. So with stock control turned on and auto mode turned on, I'm literally just dumping raw material into this thing, and it is crafting at a pretty remarkable rate, actually. I'm already at over 100 with that 550 in mind, so I'm just kind of watching and waiting until this empties out. This is the second set of 8 stacks of each. I think that'll be just about perfect. We'll see. I might be way off here. I've proven that my math can be off whenever I'm behind the camera. So far, I've got 458 of these things, and my math says 5 3/4 stacks of each of these is required. And it turns out my math with the redstone was perfect. But remember what I said earlier, I think my osmium is off now, and it is. So I've got to go get 3 more stacks of osmium plus 48. Fortunately, I've got plenty, so, not an issue. And I failed to notice I've still got 54 in there, but no, I think it'll work out just fine. So if I just dump these in here, just like so, and as we watch this number tick up, theoretically, mathematically speaking, it should stop at 550. Let's see if I'm right. Moment of truth, and nice. All right, we've done it successfully. Epic. All right, so that's exciting. So if I take one of those out, I'm gonna need it. I'm also going to need some lead and steel in my inventory just to set this thing up. So lead and steel. Now let's encode the last bit, right? So was it, I think it was steel on the tops and lead on the outsides. I think that's it. If I hit encode, stock control, and auto, there you go. Fission fuel assembly has been made. Now, I've got it set up to input and output. I'm going to set it to output to the right. So now that is going into here. So this basic chemical tank bin is going to be my limiting factor. All I have to do with the configurator, shift right click, and now it'll eject these things out automatically. And all I need to do now is dump crazy amounts of lead and steel in here until I run out of basic chemical tanks, and then the job should be done. And of course, as I've mentioned already in the previous video, this can actually be automated even better using like the QIO system or even like hoppers and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty good system. And if I hadn't been explaining how to put it together, I mean, I think it still did save me a ton of time. So I'm grateful for the formulaic assemblycator. Imagine what this thing is doing. It's saving me so much time. Each and every one of these fission fuel assemblies, I would have to shift click and then click again and then click again. It'd be 3 clicks for me per fission fuel assembly. You're talking about like 1,650 clicks, and that's assuming I don't make any mistakes. So yeah, just to put the question to rest, it is 100% worth setting up this kind of system. Even if I'm never going to use it again, it saves me enough time to justify. I've got all of my material in there. Let's see if we end up with the right amount of material in there or not. Remember, I think I got too much steel after all that, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't get enough. We're about to find out. The numbers are dropping quickly. The lead is about to run out completely. And, oh, the chemical tank is red, which means, oh, we've done it. We've done it. Look at that. Oh, wow. Okay, so 22 extra steel. Okay, 24 extra steel is what I ended up making. And now I've got a basic bin full of fuel assemblies, 550 to be exact. Oh, man. The crafting for these machines is so epic, but completely worth it. Now, I guess there's one more thing I haven't done, and that is the industrial alarm, which I'm not prepared for. I had to go into the nether and grab some glowstone. I'm going to actually leave that digital miner there. I regularly have to come over here and grab stuff. So that is the official nether digital miner. Congratulations, buddy. So I've got the glowstone. Everything else I've got in my inventory, not in my inventory, my storage. And I should be able to make those industrial alarms in no time flat. So again, to make those, lead, basic control circuits, and the redstone lamp. And a redstone lamp is glowstone and redstone. All right, so shift click, I'm going to take 4 of these, and then shift click, I'll take 4 of those. And they do not stack. Good thing I don't need that many of them, or I'd be really disappointed right about now. But okay, so I've made everything. Now let's go do some building. And starting with the casings, it is the same old start of any Mekanism machine. A solid base. 12 by 12 base is done. And by the way, just a quick note. I did mention that I wanted maybe to put the fission reactor over here, but because it ended up being smaller, I thought putting them next to each other would be good. And then maybe whenever I get the fusion reactor and the supercritical phase shifter up, I can put them on this side. Just thinking about what would look most aesthetic, considering I am now littering nature with a bunch of machinery. But okay, so next step is going to be corners. And of course, it is 14 tall. So I'm going to separate out 13, and that'll just take the guesswork out. So now create the pillars, solid pillars on all 4 corners. There you go, all 4 corners done. Now to finish the cube, and I can already tell my math was right because I have 40 of these left, 4 sides, each one is 10. There we go, the cube is done. Basic start, same with the turbine. Next thing I'm gonna do is actually grab some reactor glass. I'm gonna make the ceiling because it'll make placing the control rod assemblies a lot easier. So just a solid reactor glass ceiling. You can use the solid casings, but I figured, you know, the reactor glass uses enriched iron while the casings use steel. So technically the glass is cheaper. Also, it just makes it more aesthetically pleasing when you can see something more than just a solid face from above, which, you know, my bedroom is up there. So I do look at these things from above all the time. Solid surface of glass. You can actually go ahead and do the walls now. You know what? That's probably the worst part of the whole thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just get it done, get it over with. So I've run out of reactor glass and I still have this hole. It is 8 blocks and that's perfect because we actually have 4 ports and 4 logic adapters. So that's actually perfect. Now I'm going to just make a hole that I'm going to be able to crawl through here, and I guess I'll put these 2. Come on, jetpack, do me good. There you go. So there you go. Now the glass is done. I'll have to choose where the ports and everything go to connect these 2 to input water into this to pull out the radioactive waste. I have to set up all that here in a little bit. And that was one of the critical things about the previous videos. I did not talk about valves and inputs, outputs for the turbine, because these 2 really do have to be built together. It's ideal that you get information from both and do them at the same time when you have both machines. That's why I didn't talk about valves and input outputs for the turbine whenever I made that video a couple of days ago. All right, so next is the control rod assembly. And the way these work is you put this on the surface. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in hover mode. You put this on the surface of the ceiling. So the very, very top layer up against the ceiling. That's why I wanted to go ahead and put the ceiling in. And then I realize it's getting dark, but you should be able to still see that I'm doing this in a checkerboard pattern. So you don't want any of these to be touching. Kind of the opposite of the electromagnetic coils from the turbine where they have to be touching side by side. These things really can't be. I think it'll still work if you do it, but it's just going to be less efficient. So I'm going to finish up this pattern and try not to make any more of these kind of mistakes. So it's daytime now, so you can see this just perfectly. A very nice checkerboard pattern. And there should theoretically be 10 blocks of air between the bottom of this and the top of this. So we'll count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11. That's right, because 50 times 11 is 550, not 50 times 10. So the math proved me right, or proved me wrong in this case, but my initial calculations were right. So now what we do is we take these fission fuel assemblies and we stack them underneath the control rod assemblies, just like so. It's going to make a solid column of these assemblies all the way throughout the whole multi-structure, all the way down to the bottom, and then the gaps in between will be filled with the coolant. Now, we haven't discussed this yet, but you can do a sodium-cooled setup with the boiler, but I prefer, at least for the simplicity's sake, and I may make an adjustment whenever I do more testing, but I prefer the water coolant. It's just simpler. It may be that since last time I messed with it, it's been improved, because in the past, it didn't feel like the sodium-cooled setup was better. It seemed like it was actually worse. So it may be that now it's been adjusted, and I will be playing around with that on my test world that I do before I film again, probably, because if there's a way to make this even better, I'd rather do that sooner than later. So definitely stay tuned if you're thinking about the sodium-cooled setup here. All right, guys, this is the moment of truth. Did I make enough of these, or too much, or what? It looks like I made the perfect number. Look at that. Yes, that was a rather tedious part of the whole process. So now, because I didn't make extra reactor glass, I can't just fill it in and then see the red particles and know I built it right. I've got to put my ports and everything. So let's begin by talking about the ports, right? We're going to do the logic adapters after. So, so one thing that has to happen is that you have to put in coolant, and coolant in this case, again, is water. So I'm going to be placing a water pump basically right here. In fact, you know what? I could go ahead and do that. I don't know if I have a water bucket. I don't have any water on me. That's like against the rules. Okay, hold on. I have to go get some water. Okay, water bucket in hand. Gonna take out this dirt, and oh my goodness, my atomic disassembler is set to mega fast. Okay, it's on normal. My goodness. I'm gonna place this dirt here because I know how these electric pumps work. There's my water, and then my pump is here, and I've also got the upgrades already made too. You guys have seen this enough times. But electric pump there, and okay, come on, buddy. You work with me here, dude. Work with me. These pumps are so picky. There you go. All right, so there's that. We do need to put the upgrades in, and I didn't think about this. I need to give this thing power. So, probably okay. Fine. You get your way, buddy. I'm gonna turn you in this direction because I'm gonna have to use a quantum entangleporter to bring this thing power. I know what you may be thinking. Wait a minute. Doesn't your power channel also have water? Yes, it does. Okay. But I would rather this thing have its own pump because it's going to need a lot of water. And it's going to need a lot of water fast. So now I'm going to take this reactor glass out of here. Of course, it's going to do that. How do I? Dang it. Of course. So I'm going to break through here. Get that back. Okay. Put this back just like so, and the fission reactor port set right there. Now, I don't know if I need the configurator for this. Do I? Yes, I do. Okay, so shift right click, and it'll tell you if you have chat enabled, but green means input. Place down my electric pump right there, and then I've got a whole bunch of ultimate mechanical pipes. So I'm going to place this down just like so. And now it is beginning the process of pumping water. Now it's not going to go into here because the multi-block structure is not set up, but that is our coolant, and it's ready to go. Next step is going to be to take the coolant out and put it into the turbine, which actually reminds me, yeah, I've got my turbine valve right here. Perfect. So there is something else to consider when placing your valves, and that is distance. You actually have to have relatively long cables for this to work. And so I'm going to be placing the valve, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just say right here. This is where my turbine valve is going to go. And then kind of the same thing here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to place this down right here. And I definitely need the reactor glass to be where I want it. And then this one actually has to be output coolant, which is blue. Now, the coolant is actually going to be coming out as steam, and I'll explain it all in great detail here in just a second. But I've got to use ultimate pressurized tubes, or any kind of tube, but ultimate is required for only using this many cables, because I'll explain just a second. Okay, so there we go. We got it connected. So this should be about 12 tubes. Okay, if you hover over an ultimate pressurized tube, you can see the capacity is 1,024,000. I don't know what pump rate is used for, but in this case, it's capacity that matters. You have to have more tubes and pipes actually with the capacity that's more than your max flow rate or your water output if it's the limiting factor. For this, in this case, my max flow rate is my limiting factor. So I have to make sure I have more than 11 million millibuckets of capacity in my tubes, which means I would have to use 11 or ideally 12 of these tubes in order for this to work. And I've done that exact same thing. I've used 12, and I've done it to where I can walk under it. The next step is going to be putting the water back into this reactor. So one of the things that you can do, and I might actually do that right now, is make more of these ports, because I want a water input here, and I could actually connect this pipe up and over. That is an option. But there's a problem with the pipes, okay? The pipe's capacity is significantly lower than the tubes. You can see here, capacity is 128,000. This one's 1.024 million, right? So the math comes out that I need 87 of these mechanical pipes. Now, I did make 2 stacks because, you know, prepared and all. So if I was going to use 87, I've already got that one that's 86. So how does that math work? Is that 22? I believe that's 22. Yeah. So if I use all of these pipes right here and connect the two together, it should be enough. So you know what? Let's do it in the way I was thinking. So I'm going to go up and over, trying to make it look sort of nice. but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a real challenge. If I were to go just across the front, let me see, to make this have some sort of symmetry here. This one is in line with the glass, so this one that's going across will also be in line with the glass. I think this works, just like so. I'm going to go all the way across here, and then connect it into the turbine. But the thing about the water is that it doesn't connect to a valve on the turbine. It actually connects to the vents. So in order to make this look kind of nice, I'm just going to connect it to all the vents. And I don't know if I have too many pipes here to just do this one side, but I can, you know, go up on top of the machine or go around the back or something like that. I think that probably to keep it looking nice, I'm going to wrap it around the back side of the machine. And it doesn't matter really how many of these vents you connect it to, but I prefer to connect them. It just makes me feel better, really. There's no real reason to do it. So let's use the rest of these pipes, connect to the rest of these vents. And I did just mess that up. So let's put their hover back on and go grab that. I just realized it's dark. Wow, I just realized that it's dark. I'm so in my own head with this build that I'm not even really thinking about that. So again, the math is simple. You just take the capacity of the pipe or the tube and you divide it by whatever your limiting factor is in your turbine. And that's if you've designed everything to where the limiting factor is, in fact, the turbine. If you've made it to where your limiting factor is your fission reactor, which I guess in this case, my fission reactor is my limiting factor, but you understand what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, that's the situation we find ourselves in. Okay, so now that we've got coolant in and out, and as you can see, this thing's actually filling up. We got probably 15 million millibuckets of, or I'm sorry, 11 or 12 million millibuckets of capacity just in this pipe. It's going to dump all into this reactor once it's all put together. But we have coolant in, coolant out. Now we need to have fuel in and fuel out, because what we haven't discussed yet is that in order to make this reactor work, you have to have the fuel, the gasoline, the fissile fuel. And to make fissile fuel is this long, laborious process. And we'll have to do that in the next video. So that'll be a whole nother video. And you also have to pull the radioactive waste out of this as well. And that'll be part of next video too. So to make this thing symmetrical, let's put this port here. So I think, right there is fine. Did I drop any glass? I did not. Good. And I'm going to set this. This is to input. Okay. So whenever we have the fissile fuel, this will be where the input goes. And then the output for the radioactive waste, I'm thinking should be in a very protected location, and also a very easily accessible location. So maybe I should just stick it on the front. Yeah, I think maybe that might be what I do. So there's no center block here. So let's do... No, I think I'll do it on this side. Yeah, let's have the radioactive waste come out of here. And I'm going to set this one to output. So there you go. That is set up just right. So I've got 4 ports on the fission reactor. I've got 2 on the turbine. But the vents work as a third vent on the turbine. So you have to go in and out with the coolant on both. And then you have to come out with the power on one side and go in with the fuel on the other. But then also the fuel has a byproduct, and that has to come out of the fission reactor as well. So last thing I need to put in are the fission reactor logic adapters, and of course your industrial alarms that'll just sound off if something is going wrong. So the fact that I have 4 is awesome, because then I can use the center line here. So let's take these 4 out, just like this. I should have 4 reactor glass. Oh, I've got more than 4. I have 7. And let's put it in hover mode. Hover mode, please. Thank you. And fill in that there. Fill in that uses up all of my reactors. That's great. Or all of my reactor glass. That's great. And then place down all 4 of these logic adapters. And now it should... It didn't pop into place, which means something is wrong. So it turns out that you can't have glass on the ceiling. It's weird because I can have glass on the ceiling on my test build whenever I spawn in the buildings, but then whenever I build it myself, the top has to be solid, and I do remember this now. So it turns out that building my extra steel casings worked out to my advantage. So unfortunately, I've got to tear up this beautiful ceiling and put in an ugly solid ceiling like I was talking about. But, you know, what can you do, right? Moment of truth, guys. Bam. There you go. All right. Red particles. And now it is showing to be a solid structure. So welcome, guys, to the fission reactor. This shows us our coolant, which is filling up. It's a large tank, millions of millibuckets. The fuel tank, which is going to be holding the fissile fuel. Over here is the heated coolant, which you should never see anything in here. This is heated coolant is steam, and it should never, nothing should ever happen. If it does start to fill up, that means that your turbine is too small or you don't have enough tubes because you don't have enough capacity. And then waste tank, this should also not have a whole lot going on in it because that radioactive waste will fill up very fast. And if your tank fills up, then you'll have a radioactive a breach, and then everything around you dies, and it takes forever for that stuff to go away. So you want to have a place to put that radioactive waste for sure. There's more to be learned here, guys. Burn rate is just telling you how fast you're burning the fuel. Heating rate will be 20,000 times your millibucket, your burn rate, I believe. Your temperature is what temperature the fission reactor is at, and I believe it'll start taking damage, which you see here, at about, I think it's 1200 Kelvin. So, you know, that'll be way up here somewhere. If you go to stats, then it shows you the heating capacity, fuel surface area, boil efficiency is 1.0. I believe that's pretty good. Burn rate 550. That's what we wanted as the maximum. The minimum is 0. It'll show you from left to right how much your burn rate is, and then your rate limits you can change. So you can change it to where you can burn, you know, 50 millibuckets per tick, or 550, or 0.1. And it's always a good idea whenever you first start working with these machines to start low and work your way up, because whatever that number is set to, whenever you hit activate, which you shouldn't do right now, but whenever you do hit activate, it will burn at that rate. And then you can come in as it's on and titrate the number up and keep your eyes on all the vitals, including, you know, these vitals over here. Just make sure that everything is going well. And we'll be doing that in video next episode. And the reason why is because this thing needs to be full of water before we turn it on. You know, if we try to turn it on right now, it has no fuel. So yes, next episode, the focus will be on fuel. Now, I guess the last thing I should do is just turn on these logic adapters. So I'm going to tell this one to, you know, send out a redstone pulse, which will activate this alarm if the temperature gets too high. This one will be if there's excess waste. So like, you know, if this thing fills up, but it won't matter because once this thing fills up all the way, it's a bad deal. Damage and death happens. Damage critical. This will happen whenever the damage dealt to the reactor is over 100%. And by the way, this is a magical fission reactor. If you do obtain damage, which slowly or fast or speedily increases once you hit 1200 temperature, which you shouldn't hit unless you run out of coolant. So you should be fine there. But it will, if it obtains damage but doesn't explode past 100%, this thing will heal itself. The damage will slowly decrease, which is pretty impressive. And then insufficient fuel is also another one. And okay. Why are you going off, bro? You shouldn't. Okay, I'm going to disable this. There's no fuel, and it knows it. So there you go. You've now experienced the industrial alarm. Let me do that again. Yeah, it does not like the fact that I've got no fuel. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to deactivate you for now. I'll turn you back on once I get the fuel system all set in place. So I'm going to go sleep, and then we're going to talk about the future plans here. All right, guys, so we have finished the fission reactor, perfectly sized for the largest turbine that you can build in Mekanism. We set up the coolant system for input and output. Now, next time, we have to put together the fuel system. We're gonna actually put together the machinery necessary to create fissile fuel And we're going to set up the system that is necessary for using the radioactive waste to give us polonium, which is necessary for some of the higher level and end game machinery and equipment that you can make in Mekanism. So that is it for me today, guys. I'm going to be letting the game sit for a while as this machine fills up with water, and we'll be activating these machines in the next episode. It's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited about it. I hope you are too. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down below in the comments or on my Discord server. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.